Hello and welcome to another Confessions podcast from your friends at Radio 2. And I know you like to have a jingle, so here's Bertie, who sent this in himself, or got his family to do it.
I'm Simon Mayo. Eddie at the 90 and to want her friend. BBC Radio 2.
Which is pretty good. And if you want to actually see him singing it, we've put that on our Facebook page anyway. So it's our Confessions podcast, everything from the week. And this week we have a bunch of stories. This concise collection includes tales with these titles: Let It Flow, Fancy Pants, When Will I Be Famous, and We Take Care of Our Own. I wonder who that's about. Father Simon and the Merciful Magnanimous Mutual. I am withholding my full actual name as the place of employment where my misdemeanour occurred just happens to be the place where I still work, and the ramifications of my actions still echo loud within the fabric of the building. My confession dates back to the summer of 1999 when I was a fresh-faced 24-year-old. I have always been in love with theatre and was convinced at that time that my big break as the world's greatest actor was just around the corner. The city where I live and grew up, somewhere in the south, is lucky enough to have a modern theatre, built at some point in the years after the Second World War. It has a large 1,000-seater auditorium and a smaller studio theatre. This is narrowing it down as we work our way through. In the early 90s, the smaller studio theatre was home to our own youth music theatre, of which I was very proud to be a part. Whilst there, I managed to talk myself into getting a job in the box office, and eventually, after attending many first-night parties and functions, got to know the in-house stage management team. Anyway, my foot was in the door. I managed to get plenty of work throughout that summer, as I seemed to be doing something right. I was becoming a member of the team, and this is where the problem started. Becoming a member of the team and being incredibly inexperienced in actually working backstage left me wide open to pranks and wind-ups. Looking back now, I can't believe I was so incredibly green, but many laughs were had at my expense, like being sent to the local hardware store to ask for tartan paint. Now, this is an old standby, but anyway, D fell for it. Anyway, I gradually learnt to question pretty much everything that I was told. On one particular fit-up, I was working within the lighting department running some cables. This was the domain of the head flyman, the man in charge of the theatre's rigging system. We'll call him Barry. Whilst I was running cables over a rail, Barry growled at me in his incredibly broad West Country accent.
Oh,
or
yes.
Shall I?
I think so.
Go on.
Well, look, it might be a little bit Suffolk, but anyway, it's just going to be... Okay. So Barry growled at me in his incredibly broad West Country accent. You watch out for that lever there. That's for the drencher, that is. You'll have water everywhere.
What?
You watch out for that. That's for the drencher. It's for the drencher. You be careful.
Yes, okay.
Anyway, it's not going to get any better.
No, it's not.
I'm actually auditioning for the Archers, that's what
Yeah.
it is. Having never heard of a drencher before, I asked what it was, and Barry proceeded to tell me that there was apparently a massive trough of water high above the stage, and in the event of a fire, the drencher would flood the stage with water. Well, I looked up to the grid and I could see absolutely nothing but empty fly bars and fly wires. Yeah, okay, Barry, I thought, sure, I believe you, whatever. Though we didn't say that in 1999, but that's what I was thinking. No one is going to believe a word he's saying. Fast forward a few weeks and another show is in. It's the local amateur company giving their version of the classic musical The Sound of Music. This was the highlight of their performance calendar, and they went all out with their impressive scenery and costumes, a full orchestra, and a company worthy of a professional production. My backstage cues included moving trees around, setting and striking various bits of the Abbey, and at the end of Act 1, flying in the Mother Abbess's office. On the second or third night of the run, I can't quite remember which, I popped up to my platform, high up, and I flew in the scenery and I started back down towards the stage. As I was leaving, I happened to glance high to my left, and there it was, glinting at me in the reflected lights of the on-stage action, the lever that Barry had told me was part of the drencher. As I passed it, I had a little giggle to myself, reached out my hand and gave it a little smack.
Of course.
Remember, we're mid-production here. The noise that followed, Father Simon, has stayed with me for the rest of my life. I can still hear it as clear as bell to this day. There was a loud, metallic, clanking noise, a screech of heavy metal moving slowly against heavy metal, a strange whooshing sound, and then silence. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a mass of something rush by on its way to the stage and straight on top of the Mother Abbess and the Amdram's very own Julie Andrews, just as the band was striking up Climb Every Mountain. Never had the line Ford Every Stream seemed more appropriate. You see, it turned out that Barry had been telling the truth, and at the top of the fly tower there was indeed a massive trough filled to the brim with water. Water that had been added to the trough and only topped up occasionally when the theatre had been built. Water that had been standing there since the 1970s. When I made it back down to stage level, all hell had broken loose. There was water everywhere, across the stage, up the walls, dripping from the fixtures and fittings, in the corridors off the stage, and flowing down the stairwells into the basement. All power had been fused by the water, and the stage and auditorium were glowing eerily in the theatre's emergency lighting. People were running around like extras from Titanic. The set had been utterly destroyed. To make matters worse, once the water had hit stage level, it rushed upstage, collecting dirt and dust and debris on the way, hit the back wall, and then ran all the way back down again into the orchestra pit and over the first few rows of the audience. It was utter carnage. I have to say now that no one was hurt and everything that had been damaged was replaced by the venue's insurance. But anyway, Father Simon and the understanding united, I throw myself on your mercy and ask for your forgiveness, not for almost drowning two of the leads in an otherwise outstanding but unfortunately short-lived production of this classic show, nor for covering the orchestra and the first few rows of the audience in a torrent of 20-year-old water, and heaven knows what else, and not for closing the theatre for 2 months after the incident, because they benefited from the complete auditorium backstage refurb that they got after all. Yeah. I do have a need forgiveness for my actions immediately following my actions. You see, once I'd knocked the lever into its upright position, I panicked. Not wanting to get fired and desperate to cover my own back, I knocked the lever back into its normal position before running down to the stage level, covering myself in water as I went. Look, I'm so wet, so that it looked as though I'd been there when it happened, joining in with the disbelief and anger and confusion happening on stage. What happened? Where did that come from? Unbelievably, I was never asked any questions, and the praise I received for helping on the night in question was bittersweet. The fault was put down to the drencher system being old and completely replaced with the refurb. For the record, the theatre is still operating and doing very well, and I'm still working there on a casual basis, and it still has a drencher, only now it is a completely enclosed system so that no one can activate it out of curiosity. Lots of love, D, somewhere in the theatre, somewhere down south. I had never heard of a drencher either. I did not know that obviously it's a very important thing. If there's an emergency, that's what happens. You pull a lever, boom, everything's covered completely in water. You're not supposed to just flick it as you go past, though, Dee, just to see what happens. But that is indeed what happened. Let's see what Sister Jules makes of that.
I think, by the way, the West Country thing, I think it's either the brew house in Taunton or the Northcott in Exeter, just by the by.
Very specific. I'd have
probably done the same thing. I'd probably flicked it because why not? It was in keeping with the production, what happened. The water was at a perfect timing. It wasn't done maliciously. And the fact that Dee still works there, I think, is probably punishment enough. And they did get a refit out of it.
They did, yes, from the insurance. Yeah.
So I'm going to forgive, of course.
Okay, just because Barry's got a West Country accent, though, it could have been Cambridge.
That's true.
He could have been moving around.
Could have been
and obviously from my accent, he could have been from absolutely anywhere.
Romford.
So anyway, what do you say, Brother Matthew?
Yes, well, isn't the true culprit here the people who are making him do all these pranks or going on these wild goose chases when he first started getting the job? And therefore, that led to him not believing your man about the drencher.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, therefore, it's not his fault. Also, the theatre got a full refurb and everything was fine. And also, inspired decision to cover yourself in water. Yeah, absolutely. I was down here. Look at me. I'm so wet. Oh, it's a nightmare, isn't it? And all the water's everywhere. Look at me. I am wet, so I was definitely not me.
You're almost quite dramatic.
Yeah, almost. This story absolutely touched all of my bases. A few of my favourite things. Definitely forgiven.
Father Simon and the Collective, I write to seek your forgiveness for an event that happened 25 years ago. I come from a large family of 6 children, and this confession involves myself and my younger brother. We are both technically middle children, a position that is synonymous with attention-seeking behaviour having been lost in the pack. How true. This incident relates to an event when we were both in our 20s and should have surely overcome the trauma of our neglected childhood. We both happened to be staying at my mother's house while she was away. We were there with our respective partners, sitting in the kitchen, and began to consider the neat freak element of my mother's personality, one that neither of us had inherited. Our attention was drawn to the lovingly handcrafted spice rack that my stepfather had fashioned for my mother, who was an enthusiastic, although perhaps somewhat over-fussy cook. We pondered over the vast array of Schwartz, although there are many other brands. Schwartz, the herbs and the spices that adorned the rack, and we began to wonder how many of these weird and wonderfully named accoutrements she had ever actually used. Well, there was one way to find out. In a fit of long-suppressed rebellion, we decided that the only thing for it was to systematically swap the ingredients in the jars, carefully tipping out the pork seasoning and replacing it with Chinese 5-spice. Crushed chilies became vegetable seasoning. Za'atar spice mix became basil, and so on.
Uh-huh.
We shall return to the results in a moment. Not content with this act of devilry and somewhat fortified by the homemade ginger beer we had sourced from the back of the overstuffed cupboards, our thoughts turned to other mischievous acts. Our eyes then alighted on the marvellous and somewhat newfangled invention that was the plastic bag dispenser. Do you remember this? You used to stuff all the plastic bags in the top, and then whenever you needed one, you pulled it out of a hole at the
I've
bottom.
got one.
Yeah, I've still got one of those, yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Lots of people have got them. Very, very useful. Very few people will have done what Samantha and her sibling did. This tartan piece of adorable home furnishing, Father Simon, hung temptingly on the kitchen door, and our overactive minds led us to a completely puerile act. My brother and I systematically tied each bag to a pair of my stepfather's large and greying underpants, and then onto another plastic bag, then onto another pair of underpants, creating a long chain that would only become apparent when the first bag was removed by my mother. Oh, look, it's a Tesco bag. Oh, pants. Pants. This is a very, very good idea. Father Simon, I do not seek forgiveness from my mother, who most surely would have realised who were the perpetrators of this childish prank, but chose to say nothing, thus robbing us of our protestations of innocence. But from our other siblings, the other 4, who endured the most curious-tasting meals at my mother's table, but who, believe you me, along with my stepfather, would not have dared protest, even when she served pizzas made with nutmeg and cinnamon, apple crumble with peppercorns, and famously mint sauce made with bay leaves for that complete lack of mint flavour, which is... We should... Nigel's not here this week because Bruce is. Reasonable swap, I think. Apologies to Nigel's family. But we should pass those on.
Yeah.
Because I reckon he could probably do something with those. Pizza with nutmeg, never a good point. Apple crumble with peppercorn. Well, I don't know. Heston might have done something with that. But a mint sauce with bay leaves, don't think so. Anyway, so a couple of interesting... So messing up the spice, wrong ingredients in the wrong jars, and then an interesting trick with the bag and stepfather's underpants. What do you make of that, Sister Bombi?
Samantha and your brother, you are wicked, wicked children, but I love it. I love the underpant bunting, because that's what it is, isn't it?
Underpant bunting is
There you
exactly
go.
what it is.
And it's brilliant. What I also love about this is sense of humour in your family 25 years on. It's what we do, isn't it, sometimes, is we revert to what we were like as kids. And I love the fact that your mum never says anything. She still never gives you a response. So it's kind of all's well at home. And as for forgiveness from your siblings, I think it's all part of the deal, really.
I love the idea of the fact that this food is served and no one actually says anything.
Because that's kindness, isn't it? Because you don't want to upset someone's feelings. So I think you are forgiven for your sense of fun.
Cinnamon on a pizza? Come
Well,
on.
there's worse things.
Right, Brother Matthew.
Well, surely what Nige always says to us when he's cooking is he says that you should always taste your food as you're making it. So Mum will have known that she was serving them pizza with nutmeg on it and all those kind of
Did it
things.
on purpose?
So I think Mum knew about this all along and inspired tying every plastic bag to a pair of his pants. That is superb. I'm definitely going to try that. So I think definitely, and I love the fact that Mum Mum has decided I'm not going to dignify any of this with a response. I know exactly who's responsible for this, but I'm not going to sit there and complain about it to you, because then you win. I win this time, so Mum wins, so definitely forgiven.
I think a number of people are going to try that. It's the kind of thing that you could do. Just
Yeah.
paper bag, pants.
Some pants.
Paper bag and pants.
Oh, look, more pants.
Or other things. I'm definitely doing that to my sisters tonight.
And we'd like some. If you do that, we'd like some photos. Thank you very much indeed. Father Simon and your holy and esteemed and beautiful collective with
That's
the
Matt.
England. Pardon?
It's Matt.
No, Bobby, I'm looking at you.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
With the England. Sorry, it's like Nigel was here just for a moment. With the England cricket team currently on tour in Bangladesh.
There they are. Yes.
And I think there's a test match
The test starts tomorrow, yes.
Tomorrow.
Yeah, yeah.
How topical is this?
Unbelievable.
I have been reminded of an episode in my life that I need to seek forgiveness for. My wife and I visited Bangladesh in the late 1990s to see her family. Having been married a couple of years earlier, this was my first visit to the country. Whilst we were staying in Chittagong with Faisal, my wife's cousin, I happened to mention to him that the England A cricket team were on tour. Faisal then informed me that they were actually playing today at the local ground in Bangladesh, and would I like to watch the game? Well, as a cricket fan, I absolutely could not refuse. So off we went, Faisal, my wife and I, in a chauffeur-driven car. Yes, it's a chauffeur-driven car. We were doing it in style. On the way to the ground, I thought we would be standing in the main stand, soaking up the sun and the atmosphere, and thinking I might be the only Englishman there. Faisal asked the driver to park the car at the back of the pavilion and told us to wait outside until he got some seats. A few minutes later, he came back and said, "Follow me." So we followed Faisal into the pavilion, then up 2 flights of stairs, and we did indeed have a lovely view overlooking the ground. However, when I looked around, I realised that I was not the only Englishman in this section of the pavilion, and to my complete and total surprise, I actually recognised some of my fellow countrymen. For a start, I recognised Ronnie Irani and Arnie Sidebottom.
Okay.
That's the England cricketers, Ronnie Irani, Essex captain, one-day international star, and Arnie Sidebottom of Yorkshire and England, actually also of Manchester United and Huddersfield Town,
Wow.
which is an interesting story. I could not believe how Faisal had managed to wangle us not just into the ground, but into the actual England team balcony. And we were sitting with the team and their wives and their families. Refreshments, cushions, free snacks. How about that? Actually, I do know how we got in. Money had exchanged hands. But I was not going to argue with Faisal, as we had some great seats with a cracking view. We had a wonderful time on the balcony. I nodded to Ronnie Irani knowingly. He looked back at me as though I was an idiot. He looked somewhat puzzled, thinking, who the hell is this guy and how did he get in? Well, I just told you how we got in. After the match finished, we tried to make our way back to the car. And it was at this point that everything got a little bit surreal. Behind the pavilion were hundreds, if not thousands, of local supporters wanting to get a glimpse of their cricketing superstars. They saw me leave the England side of the pavilion and head straight for my chauffeur-driven car, and they assumed incorrectly that I might have been an England cricketer. Well, we all managed to scramble into the car, but we soon realised that we were not going anywhere. We were now surrounded by local supporters, all peering in through the window trying to see who I was. They were tapping on the window with their pencils. "Oi, you! Sign this!" And pieces of paper wanted my autograph, and for the first time and only time in my life, I knew what it felt like to be famous. It was a fantastic feeling. Yeah, hi, I'm very busy. I'm having my free snacks and sitting on my cushion. After 5 minutes of not moving, and actually not signing autographs, for obvious reasons, the mood began to change. The car began to move sideways, and my wife started to panic. She said, "Just sign their autograph books, why don't you?" I didn't think I could pass myself off as an England cricketer, as I'm in my mid-30s, 5 foot not a lot, and a rather large belly. In fact, quite roly-poly is how you'd describe me. I didn't really look like a test cricketer. And then I remembered who the England tour manager was, and with a relief and smile on my face, I wound down the window, took their pencils and bits of paper and wrote, "Lots of love, all the best, Mike Gatting." So Father Simon, I seek for... And it's fair to say that that Mike... Well, the standard... Whenever Jonathan Agnew or anyone else has been on the programme, the joke is that Mike Gatting eats cake.
Okay.
Isn't
yeah.
it? I mean, that's
Yeah,
fair
no,
enough.
That's fair enough.
That's a
Yeah,
fair
it is,
enough,
yes,
you know.
Yeah.
And he's not known for being
Svelte? No,
svelte.
no, I'm sure you'd be the first to say.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So, Father Simon, I seek forgiveness to all the supporters in Bangladesh who, to this day, think they actually have Mike Gatting's autograph. I also have to apologise to Mike Gatting himself, because if you think you got Mike Gatting's autograph, you're at that match all those years ago. It's actually Neil from Nottingham who'd like a little bit of forgiveness here. Anyway, very good. I enjoyed that. And topical, and England playing Bangladesh tomorrow, so we're right on it. What do you say there, Sister Bobby?
I'm not impressed, really, Neil.
No?
Because, first of all, you went into a VIP area, and the whole rule of cool in a VIP area is to pretend that you belong there. You don't act like you don't belong there. You don't look at people and kind of, you know...
Look at me, free crisps.
Yeah, you just don't do that. Everyone knows you don't. So, yeah, even on that point, you lose. On that point alone, you've lost some points for me, but also pretended to be someone else. All those poor people that thought they had Mike Gatting's signature, and they don't now. That lets them down. It's not fair.
I think his wife was
He didn't
panicking.
need to. No, they could have got it. No, completely unnecessary. It wasn't a life or death situation. Neil, on this time, you are unforgiven.
All right, it's harsh, Bobby. What do you say?
Yes, Chittagong is where they're playing tomorrow as well, I've just realised.
Amazing.
Amazing. We all love these stories, don't we, of being able to blag your way into VIP. There was those two lads who managed to blag their way onto the Olympic bus in Manchester this week and got interviewed on the telly. And so, yeah, we all love those kind of stories. What I don't understand is why he made his autograph legible. I would have just signed it and then done that scrawl thing that, you know, all the stars do, where they just a wavy line, wavy line, and
Is it
a couple
Simon
of
Le Bon?
dots. Simon Le Bon, dot, and underline, kiss. Should have done that, really, rather than putting Mike Gatting, because Mike Gatting's not going to sign his name like that. So I'm going to forgive, apart from for the autograph, but I'm still going to forgive.
Father Son. My multiple confession goes back to 1980 and 1981 when I was a teenage civil servant in London. Before then, I had been a growing fan of Bruce after 1, hearing Born to Run on the radio, 2, discovering that a great song on the Hollies live album, 4th of July, Asbury Park, Sandy, was written by Bruce. And then, 3, seeing an episode of the Old Grey Whistle Test with a live showing of Bruce and the E Street Band playing a fantastic version of the song Rosalita in Phoenix, Arizona, complete with a stage invasion of female fans. Anyway, I was hooked. So in 1980, the film No Nukes was given a limited cinema release in the UK, and this featured live performances from Bruce and the E Street Band, Jackson Browne, Bonnie Raitt, and other great American artists. The film was due to be shown near me in the Odeon, High Street, Kensington, just once. One showing Wednesday afternoon. The problem was I'd used up all of my annual leave. So, confession number 1, I phoned into my civil service office telling my supervisor I'd gone down with a mysterious stomach complaint and wouldn't be in that day. So, paid sick leave courtesy of the government, misuse of public funds, and lying to my supervisor in order to see Bruce in full flight on the big screen. Roll on January 1981 now. The River album is out and being loudly played to death in my tiny bedsit at all hours of the day. And a new show announced that was perfect for me. Bruce would be playing at Brighton Centre and tickets would go on sale 9 a.m. the following Friday at the box office. So I decided to go to Brighton from London on the night train and queue up. Problem was, here's the second confession, again I had no annual leave left to take and it would be impossible to phone in sick as I would actually be in the queue outside the Brighton Centre. No mobile phones in 1981, of course. I therefore asked a colleague of mine if they would wait for my supervisor to leave the room that Friday morning, then on returning say that Graham had phoned in sick whilst he was out. So confession number 2, more government paid sick leave, getting a colleague to lie for me, which would have been very bad for them if caught out. Anyway, off I go to Brighton on the night train, arriving in the early hours of the morning. As I got off the train, I noticed 2 leather-jacketed and jeans types in front of me. I bet they're off for tickets too, I thought, so I discreetly overtook them and headed down the long, steep hill from Brighton Station to Brighton Centre on the seafront. All going well, I was thinking front row tickets maybe. And then the old lady appeared. An old lady dragging an extremely heavy, large suitcase up the steep hill. And anyone who knows this area is a very, very long hill, and it's very, very steep, and it's tough for most people. So here's the old lady dragging up the bag here. My heart sank. "Young man," she said.
Here we go.
All right, young man, she said, "would you help me with my suitcase up the hill to the station?" My heart sank further. And that was before she added, I'm due to get the train to Gatwick Airport to fly out to see my son who isn't well, but the taxi didn't turn up and the public phone box had been vandalised, so I couldn't call them, and so I've got to walk up here. I was in a fluster. In usual circumstances, I would happily have been the Good Samaritan and helped out, but this was for Bruce. I had waited years for this chance to see him live, and I'd carefully laid plans in place to cover my tracks at work to be there. So I mumbled a bit, and then, to my horror, she said, I'll pay you. And I went, no, I don't want your money. Then I spotted the two chaps I'd overtaken at the station walking down the hill towards us. So confession number 3. Thinking on my feet, I said, see those two guys there? They'll help you because there are 2 of them. They're stronger than me. They can share your suitcase and get you to the station much quicker. I know them. They've got lots and lots of time. They would love to help you. Oh, thank you very much, she says. And with a quick goodbye, off I went at a fast pace down the hill. I left it for a few minutes before turning around to see the two chaps and the old lady in conversation, with her pointing at me, one picking up the suitcase and the other raising his fist and making other gestures at me. I hurried on to join the queue at the back of the Brighton Centre. Curses! This leads me to my 4th confession. Wow. Though I am confessing on behalf of a few hundred people, to be honest. When I arrived at the concert centre, there was already a queue of 200 to 300, including a hardy dozen who had been camping out for 2 to 3 nights to get front row tickets. By 8 a.m, an hour before the box office was due to open, the queue had grown very large and the manager opened the box office early. Alas, the hardy dozen at the front were still in their sleeping bags and caught unawares as the lengthy queue, including me, rushed past them. Bye, we're getting the tickets. I got them. And as soon as the lights went down a few weeks later, I managed to get to the front and Bruce opened up with a storming version of Born to Run. Absolutely fantastic. So here I am, 35 years later, 65 Bruce Springsteen shows all over the UK, Europe and the USA under my belt, and a second mortgage worth of money well spent. Please accept my multi-layered confession for lying to my supervisor about my health so I could see a film, putting a colleague into a potential disciplinary situation by getting them to lie so I could get Brighton tickets, for not helping an old lady with a suitcase and lying to her about 2 complete strangers, also to them for leaving them late for the queue for tickets, and for me, for hundreds of others rushing past the hardy souls in their sleeping bags who'd been sleeping rough for a few days to get the tickets. I beg forgiveness on all of those matters. P.S. If you're reading this when Bruce is with you, I need to confess to him that the 2015 Light of Day Saturday night show at the Paramount Theatre in Asbury Park, it was me in the front row that polished off the glass of tequila that he'd just started on and asked my friend Kim Skaggs to hold while he was singing down the other end of the stage. He did remark that someone in the front row had been taking liberties with his tequila. Graham in Hastings with a record 5 confessions, all related to Bruce. Dishonesty, taking sick leave, taking government money. A poor old lady, all she wanted was to get to the station. Did Graham care? What would Bruce have done? That's the question. Anyway, let's see what Brother Bobby makes of this.
Well, first of all,
Sister
you
Bobby.
know those days, it doesn't matter, you know those days where your personal endeavour could guarantee you a ticket, not like your luck on the internet. And those days, I remember, you know, the things you used to do to get a ticket. So first of all, Graham, well done on your personal endeavour. But having said that, there were people there who actually camped out the night before. There are so many confessions here. I'm going to say, look, well done at getting it. You did actually find an alternative for the lady that needed a help up the hill. You did nominate somebody else, and of course, they could have done the job just as well as you, but also perhaps just a little bit better than you. So I'm going to say, because it's the boss, and because you really, really, really wanted to go, and because you made the effort, I'm going to forgive you just this once.
What if that old lady was actually an angel, and by the time they got to the top of the hill, she might have said, "Thank you, son. Here's front row tickets because I'm an angel." What about that? That could have happened, but it didn't. Anyway,
I think it's probably unlikely.
Oh, okay. Just trying. What do you think, Brother Matthew?
But yes, I don't know what this says about me, but I have no problem with the lying and the not helping the little old lady up the hill. However, I have a massive problem with queue jumping. Queue jumping is something that we do not do. No one should be queue jumping. So I'm not going to forgive just because of that. And yes, I look back to those days where the only way of getting a ticket was to queue at the box office, and I remember queuing for bands, and wasn't that so much easier than hitting F5 refresh on your computer and then finding they've all been snapped up by some secondary ticket hub site.
Sorry, Grandad.
Yeah, so I'm not going to forgive because you don't jump the queue,
You're not.
pal.
Well, they were this week's confessions. Very good. Thank you. Nice and topical, I think, in a couple of places. Send your own dark and shadowy secret. Unburden yourself. Go on, do it now. Just got a message. Confessions at bbc.co.uk. Sorry, it's nothing important. So don't forget you can get all the best stuff from the last 30 days on iPlayer. More confessions in a week. Don't forget you can listen to all our shows from the last 30 days. I mean, imagine the entertainment you can have there. It's all on the iPlayer. So this week we featured the Radio 2 Book Club with the latest choice, Thin Air, with author Michelle Paver telling us about her mountain set ghost story. That was on Monday. Tuesday, Bill Wyman was in talking about the blues and Blues Fest. Wednesday, for Desert Island Books, we had Jilly Cooper. And on Thursday, our specially extended interview with the boss himself, Bruce Springsteen, which I can't remember if I'd mentioned before. Anyway, if you only listen to one thing this week, you should be listening to the radio a whole lot more. Thanks.